Have you ever encountered something so impossible it froze you in shock on a deserted roadside? That's exactly what happened to Jim, a struggling mechanic who was just trying to get through another day fixing cars when he spotted twin girls wearing pendants he recognized instantly, pendants that should have been buried with his wife. The gleaming metal caught the light like a forgotten star suddenly resurrected, the familiar engraving confirming what seemed impossible. The pendant that belonged in Harper's casket from 3 years ago now hung around a child's neck. Jim stood paralyzed as questions flooded his mind. How could these children have it? And why did they somehow feel familiar? Jim Clayton worked as a mechanic at Wilson's Auto Shop, a small garage on the outskirts of town. At 38, his life had fallen into a predictable routine, waking up at 5:30 each morning, working until sunset and returning to his apartment. The walls were lined with photos of his late wife Harper, her bright smile preserved behind glass frames that Jim maintained meticulously. 3 years had passed since Harper's death, but Jim still wore his wedding ring and kept her clothes in the closet. Some evenings he would sit on the fire escape looking at the stars and talking to Harper as if she were still there. His co-workers had stopped inviting him to social gatherings, understanding that Jim was still working through his grief. On that fateful Tuesday afternoon, everything changed when Jim received a call about a broken-down Mustang on Route 16 15 miles outside town. With the towing service backlogged, Jim grabbed his toolkit and drove his pickup to the location. He found a classic red 1967 Mustang pulled over on the shoulder, hood up and hazard lights blinking. A woman with auburn hair stood beside the car, phone in hand. She introduced herself as Christine Vale and explained that the car had suddenly stopped running. As Jim inspected the engine, he noticed 2 little girls about 6 years old, playing near a grassy area several feet from the road. Something about the twins made Jim pause. They were identical with dark curly hair that reminded him of someone. One laughed, and the sound sent a shiver of recognition through him. Jim refocused on the car's engine. "Fuel pump's gone," he told Christine. "I've got a temporary replacement that should get you to town, but you'll need a proper fix soon." As he worked, the twins wandered closer, curious about his repairs. Jim smiled at them, and that's when he saw it. Matching silver pendants hanging around each girl's neck. His hands froze on the wrench. The pendants were small silver crescents with a tiny star embedded in the curve. In that moment, Jim remembered placing this exact pendant around Harper's neck at her funeral. "Keep looking up for me," he had whispered, referencing their phrase for difficult times. The pendant had been inscribed with "Always look up," Harper's grandmother's heirloom passed down through generations. Jim's heart hammered against his ribs. His vision narrowed and sweat broke out across his forehead. How could these children be wearing Harper's pendant? The one he had buried with his wife? One of the twins, with a small dimple in her right cheek, moved closer. "What's wrong with the car?" she asked. Jim struggled to find his voice. "Just a small part that needs replacing," he managed, his eyes fixed on the pendant. He needed to see if it had the inscription. "Ella Bella, come back over here please," Christine called, tension suddenly evident in her voice. As the girl turned away, the pendant swung outward. Jim caught a glimpse of something engraved on the back. He deliberately dropped a tool, positioning himself for a better view when they returned. "Sorry about that," Christine said, keeping the girls close now. Jim noticed her hand move protectively to one of the pendants, adjusting it to hide the back. While finishing the repair, Jim created an opportunity by asking the girls to hold his flashlight. The pendant on Bella flipped over momentarily, revealing the inscription, "Always look up," in the flowing script he remembered. Christine paid quickly, her manner increasingly anxious. "Thank you for your help," she said, hurrying the twins toward the car. Jim handed her his business card. "The repair is temporary. Bring it by the shop this week for a proper fix." As they drove away, Jim stood motionless. The pendant buried with Harper was now around the necks of twin girls. Either someone had disturbed his wife's grave or there was another explanation, equally impossible. Jim barely slept that night, the image of those pendants burning in his mind. At 2 a.m. he opened his laptop and typed Christine Vale into the search bar. Several social media profiles appeared and he quickly found her, the same auburn-haired woman from the roadside. Her profile was mostly private, but she had a few public photos. One picture from 3 years ago caught his attention. Christine stood outside a courthouse holding 2 infant car seats. The caption read, "The day our family became complete. Welcome home, Ella and Bella." The date made Jim's hands shake. It was just 2 weeks after Harper's funeral. He scrolled deeper, finding glimpses of the twins growing up. A birthday post showed Ella blowing out candles, her expression eerily familiar. Another captured Bella painting, her small face scrunched in concentration exactly like Harper's used to. In every recent picture they wore those pendants, identical to Harper's in every detail. With his mind racing and heart pounding, Jim knew he needed answers at the source. By morning he called in sick to work for the first time in years and drove to Oakwood Cemetery where Harper was buried, carrying a small bunch of daisies, her favorite flowers. Kneeling beside her headstone, he placed the flowers and ran his fingers over the engraved letters of her name. "I don't understand what's happening, Harper," he whispered. "Those girls had your pendant." Jim walked to the cemetery office, where a middle-aged woman sat behind a desk. He explained that he needed to verify something in his wife's casket. The woman's expression turned from sympathetic to concerned. "I'm sorry, Mr. Clayton, but we can't allow exhumations without proper documentation. You'd need a court order." As Jim turned to leave, he spotted Ray, the groundskeeper who had been working at Oakwood for over 30 years. Ray had attended their wedding. "Ray," Jim called out, "I need your help." They sat under an oak tree and Jim explained about the twins and the pendants. The groundskeeper's face grew somber. "I can't authorize an exhumation," Ray said. "But there's something you should know. In the months before Harper passed, I saw her here often." "She came to the cemetery before she died?" Jim asked, confused. Ray nodded. "I'd see her leaving in her car heading toward that medical clinic on Riverbend Road. Sometimes twice a week." Jim frowned. Harper had received treatment at Memorial Hospital downtown, not at any clinic on Riverbend. That afternoon Jim drove to Maggie Winter's house. When he knocked, Maggie looked surprised to see him. Inside her living room, Jim explained about the twins and the pendants. Maggie's face paled and she walked to the window. "Maggie, please. If you know something," Jim's voice cracked, torn between feeling betrayed and desperate for answers. "I promised her I wouldn't tell you," Maggie said, barely audible. "Tell me what?" He clenched his fists, fighting back tears. "Harper was keeping something from you during her last months. I told her you deserved to know, but she was adamant." "What was she hiding?" Jim asked, his throat tight. "Maybe you should look through that box of Harper's things I gave you after the funeral." "Did you ever open it?" At home Jim found the box. Inside were books, a scarf, and a photo album. He found what he was looking for, a picture of Harper wearing the crescent pendant at their wedding. 2 days later, Christine and the twins entered the garage. While Jim worked on the Mustang, he studied the girls. Ella laughed, revealing Harper's dimple. Bella's eyes showed Harper's unique green-gray color. As he closed the hood, Jim knew with absolute certainty. These were Harper's daughters. Which meant they were his daughters too. The Riverbend Medical Clinic stood on the edge of town, a modest one-story building surrounded by maple trees. Jim sat in his truck, staring at the entrance for nearly 20 minutes before finding the courage to go inside. According to the directory in the lobby, the cardiac unit was in the East Wing. His heart pounded as he approached the nurse's station. A woman in blue scrubs looked up from her computer. Her name tag read, Patricia Danner, RN. "May I help you?" she asked. "I hope so," Jim said, his voice unsteady. "My name is Jim Clayton. My wife Harper was a patient here 3 years ago." Nurse Danner's expression changed slightly. "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss any patient information without proper authorization." "Please," Jim said. "I'm not asking for medical details. I just need to know why she was coming here." "She was being treated at Memorial Hospital downtown, but I recently learned she was visiting this clinic regularly before she died." "Mr. Clayton, I understand this is difficult, but patient confidentiality laws prevent me from sharing information." Jim showed her a photo of the twins playing at the garage. "These girls are wearing my wife's pendant, the one I placed in her casket. They were adopted shortly after Harper's death." Nurse Danner glanced at the photo. Recognition flashed in her eyes before she looked away, busying herself with papers. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," she said, her voice softening. Jim walked to the parking lot, collapsed into his truck, and finally broke. 3 years of grief came pouring out like a dam bursting after years of pressure. Harper had kept something monumental from him. Something that changed everything he thought he knew about their life together. A gentle tap on his window startled him. Nurse Danner stood outside, her expression troubled. Jim wiped his face and rolled down the window. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said quietly. "But I remember your wife very well. She talked about you often." "Under a maple tree," Nurse Danner explained. "Harper came to us after her diagnosis at Memorial. She had peripartum cardiomyopathy, a rare form of heart failure that occurs during pregnancy or after delivery. She was referred to Dr. Weston, who specializes in this condition." Pregnancy. Jim felt as if the earth had tilted beneath him. The word echoed in his mind, opening a chasm between what he'd believed and this new reality. Nurse Danner nodded. She found out she was pregnant with twins the same day she received her diagnosis. The cardiomyopathy was already advanced. Continuing the pregnancy would put tremendous strain on her heart. "She could have died," Jim whispered. The recommendation was to terminate the pregnancy. But Harper made a different choice. "Why wouldn't she tell me? We could have faced it together. She said she couldn't bear to make you choose between her and the babies. She knew you would want her to terminate to save herself." Jim remembered those months, how tired Harper had seemed, how she'd insisted on handling her appointments alone to spare him the stress. "What happened after the babies were born?" he asked. Harper arranged for a private adoption. She went into labor early at 7 months. The twins were small but healthy. Her condition deteriorated rapidly after delivery. "She made arrangements through an adoption agency," Nurse Danner continued. "She wanted a single mother who couldn't have children of her own. Someone who would treasure the twins." The nurse retrieved a sealed envelope from her car. "Harper left this with me. She made me promise that if you ever found out about the twins, I would give this to you." She handed him the envelope. "She loved you very much, Mr. Clayton. Everything she did out of love." Jim stared at the envelope. On the front, in Harper's handwriting, were the words, "For Jim if he finds them." Jim sat in his parked truck outside the clinic, Harper's letter resting on his lap. The envelope felt impossibly heavy. Rain began to fall, pattering against the windshield in a gentle rhythm that matched the trembling of his hands. He traced his finger over Harper's handwriting, the familiar loops and curves that he hadn't seen in 3 years. He couldn't bring himself to open it yet. His mind wandered back to their life together. He remembered a Sunday morning 6 years ago, Harper curled against him in bed, talking about their future children. "I think I'd like to have twins," she had said, smiling. "A matching set." Jim had laughed and pulled her closer. The pendant was Harper's treasure from her grandmother, given on her 16th birthday with advice to always look up when life became difficult. Harper wore it daily, having a duplicate made after her grandmother died. "One day," she told Jim, "we'll have a daughter and she'll have her own crescent moon." Jim took a deep breath and carefully opened the envelope. The paper crinkled beneath his fingers as several pages fell into his lap. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof as he began to read. "My dearest Jim, if you're reading this, you've found our daughters. I've imagined this moment so many times. Your confusion, your hurt, your anger at my decision to keep them secret from you. I hope someday you'll understand why I made this choice." Jim's eyes blurred with tears. The words swam before him. "On February 3rd, I went to Dr. Kaplan for what I thought was a routine checkup. Instead, I received 2 pieces of news that changed everything. First, I was pregnant with twins. For a brief, beautiful moment, I was overjoyed. Then came the second news. My heart condition had progressed to stage 4. His fingers tightened on the paper, crinkling it slightly. "I know what you would have wanted me to do. You would have begged me to terminate, to choose my life over unborn children we hadn't met. You would have said we could try again when I was better, or we could adopt. You would have chosen me, Jim. And I couldn't bear to make you choose, only to lose me anyway." A sob caught in his throat. She had known him so well. Harper described meeting Christine Vale, who had lost her husband and couldn't have children. "When I met her, I knew she was the one. She showed me the nursery she had prepared, 2 cribs, because she said she always felt she was meant to have twins." The rain eased, a momentary silence filling the truck. "I gave Christine both pendants and asked her to give one to each girl. I told her about you, about what a wonderful father you would have been. Christine promised that if you ever found them, she would welcome you into their lives." Jim turned to the final page, his heart racing. I know you're angry with me, Jim. The truth is, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you alone with twin babies while you were grieving. You deserved the chance to heal. And our daughters deserved a mother who could be there for every moment. He wiped away a tear, understanding washing over him. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. But please understand that I made this choice out of love. Love for our daughters and love for you. If you've found them, it means the impossible has happened. Always look up, my love. Even in the darkest night, the stars are still there. Forever yours, Harper. Jim folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. The rain had stopped and sunlight broke through the clouds. He started the truck, his mind clear for the first time in years. Harper had given him the daughters he never knew he had and the chance to build something new from the fragments of his broken heart. Jim waited 3 days before contacting Christine. He needed time to process Harper's letter and decide how to approach the situation. Finally, he called the number on the invoice from the Mustang repair. Hello, this is Jim Clayton from Wilson's Auto Shop. I was wondering if we could meet to discuss something important. There was a pause on the line before Christine responded. This is about the Pendants, isn't it? They arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between their homes without the twins. When Christine arrived, Jim noticed the tension in her shoulders and the cautious way she scanned the room before sitting down. I found out about Harper, Jim said gently, placing the letter on the table between them. I know about the twins. Christine's face paled. She gripped her coffee cup tightly, her knuckles turning white. Are you going to try to take them from me? No, Jim assured her. They're your daughters. You've raised them for 3 years. As Christine's shoulders relaxed slightly, Jim felt a weight lifting. This woman had been carrying fear for years. Fear of this very moment. Christine's eyes filled with tears. Harper made me promise not to contact you. She said if you discovered the truth on your own, it would be meant to be. You knew about me all this time? Jim asked. Christine nodded. Harper showed me pictures, told me stories. She wanted me to know the man who fathered my daughters. Our daughters, Jim said softly. I just want to know them, to be part of their lives, however makes sense for all of us. Seeing you with them at the garage. They liked you. Bella talked about the car man for days. Christine showed Jim photos of the twins. Their first steps, first words, first day of preschool. Jim soaked in every detail, searching for traces of Harper in their faces. Ella loves to draw, Christine said, showing him colorful scribbles. She sits for hours with her crayons, just like Harper with her sketchbooks. And Bella? Jim asked. Bella takes apart every toy she gets. Last Christmas she examined the wheels on her new toy car more than playing with it. Harper couldn't change a light bulb, Jim laughed. Bella must get that from me. They agreed Jim would meet the twins officially at their playground. Christine would explain that Jim knew their birth mother. When Saturday arrived, Jim watched 2 small figures burst from Christine's car, racing toward the swings like colorful butterflies, weightless and free. Hello, Ella. Hello, Bella, Jim said, kneeling as Christine brought them over. Ella studied him carefully. Did you really know our first mommy? Yes. She was my best friend, Jim said, emotion thickening his voice. Did she like ice cream? Bella asked seriously. Jim laughed. She loved ice cream. Chocolate chip cookie dough was her favorite. That's my favorite, Bella exclaimed, eyes wide with wonder. In the silence that followed, Jim felt something shift inside him. These weren't just Harper's daughters or theoretical children. They were real, with preferences and personalities that both reflected and transcended their origins. The twins peppered Jim with questions about Harper as they conquered the playground equipment. By afternoon's end, Ella had taken his hand naturally as they walked to the water fountain. 2 weeks later, Christine invited Jim to dinner. The twins showed him their room, their toys, and photo albums documenting their lives. We need to figure out what they should call you, Christine said as the twins played nearby. Whatever feels right to all of you, Jim replied. I don't want to confuse them. Over the following months, Jim became a regular presence. One evening as Jim read a bedtime story, Ella touched her pendant. Did our first mommy look like me or Bella? Jim smiled. She had Bella's eyes and your dimple. And you both have her kind heart. 1 year later, Jim stood in Christine's backyard watching the twins chase each other through the sprinkler. Their laughter mingled with the gentle hiss of water as sunlight danced across their silver crescents. Christine handed Jim a glass of cool lemonade. "Harper would have loved this," she said quietly. He nodded. "She gave us all a gift we never expected." Over months of shared dinners and weekend outings, they had formed something unique. Something new and precious. The twins had two parents who loved them, connected through Harper's sacrifice. Like stars emerging after twilight, they were always looking up, even in darkness.